Welcome back to the Freedom First podcast. We are your hosts, Blaine Smotherman
and Eric Hearn.
This episode is brought to you in part by Jeffries Firearms Training.
Shooters making shooters. For more information, contact owner Ronnie Jeffries on Instagram at Jeffries Firearms Training.
In today's tumultuous time, strong leadership is extremely valuable. And our guest today is not only a strong leader himself, but is helping to build tomorrow's leaders and businesses through his transformational leadership organization, his writing, and way of living. Our guest on this episode is a Navy SEAL combat veteran, award-winning entrepreneur, best-selling author of Embrace the Suck, Taking Point, and the founder and CEO of Taking Point Leadership. Upon leaving SEAL Team 5, he turned his discipline and battlefield lessons to the world of business and has become an accomplished entrepreneur, author, and acclaimed speaker on topics ranging from leadership and building high-performance teams to culture and organizational transformation. He has degrees in finance and economics from SMU, certificates in English and history from Oxford University in England, and a graduate business degree from University of San Diego. His extensive experience is both academic and real-world in nature. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Brent Gleeson.
Welcome. You have now entered the Freedom First podcast,
where we have conversations with some of the most interesting human beings on the planet.
People who live and breathe a Freedom First mentality. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Freedom First podcast. Today we have on Brent Gleeson. He is a Navy SEAL combat veteran, award-winning entrepreneur, best-selling author of Embrace the Suck and Taking Point. He's an acclaimed speaker on topics ranging from leadership and building high-performance teams to culture, resilience, and organizational transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Brent Gleeson.
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's going good, going good. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Awesome.
All right, Brent. So we'll jump right into it. We do a segment called the Freedom Minute. We're gonna ask you some rapid fire questions. They're gonna come at you from all angles, so be ready. All right.
Go.
All right. So first question is going to be, what is the most memorable moment in your career?
I've had several different career paths. So I think one of the most memorable moments was having joined the Navy, and it was navigating through the SEAL training pipeline. And for the viewer, listener, it's well over a year, but you think of BUDS, which is the first 6 months, then you have advanced training, which is SQT or SEAL qualification training. Well, literally those 3 days we had between BUDS and SQT was 9/11. So that's what was, a total mindset transformation as it relates to what the vision of a career in special operations would be. And obviously, we always take our job extremely seriously, but that's when things got real and transformed the entire trajectory of that journey. So,
awesome. What is your most embarrassing moment in your career?
I don't know if we have that much time, gentlemen, but I want to respect your time. One of the most embarrassing moments in my career was actually before the Navy. I was a financial analyst. I did my undergrad at SMU, then worked as a financial analyst for a global firm. I was based in downtown Dallas, and we had put together this big portfolio package of recommendations for real estate and relocation for Blockbuster. Do you guys remember Blockbuster? Barely? Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
it used to be a thing. Mm-hmm. And I'd put this presentation together. That was, as an analyst, that was one of my main jobs. I spent 2 weeks on it. I was really, really proud of it. And the two guys I was working with, my boss and his peer, had reviewed it in detail. We were good to go. We go into this meeting with the head of real estate and finance for Blockbuster, all globally, all of Blockbuster. And we have an hour meeting. Things go really well. And this guy waited till the very end of the meeting to let me know that I had misspelled their brand name on the front cover of the portfolio we put in front of them in the presentation. I spelled it without a C, B-L-O-K, Buster. Yeah, so that was a very defining moment in my early professional career. So attention to detail, gentlemen, always something important to live by.
Yeah, lesson learned. I'm sure you didn't do that again.
No. I still reread emails 3 times before I send them to clients.
Yeah. So me and Blaine were actually talking about this next question because of what you did being a Navy SEAL. We kind of couldn't figure out what this answer would be. So we're really interested to hear this one. So what is your biggest fear?
My biggest fear, and I actually touched on this in the new book, Embrace the Suck. My biggest fear, like many, is ending this short life with a laundry list of regrets of things that I did, things I didn't do, relationships unmended. And so that's where I kind of end the book with, inspired by Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Number 2 being think with the end in mind, behave with the end in mind, plan with the end in mind. So one of my biggest things is having regrets when it comes to pursuing a purpose-driven life and leaving the world a little bit better place than we found it. So trying to always tackle each day with that in mind, helps, making better decisions and hopefully living a life that impacts others.
Yeah, we knew it wasn't going to be an answer like snakes or spiders or anything like that, because a guy like you definitely doesn't have any fears like that.
Yeah,
I did a trip to Thailand, and I did end up eating the live beating heart of a snake and drinking all of its blood.
So that is a real
snakes.
thing.
The legend of Brent Gleeson.
You got to check these boxes, guys.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Last question. This is one we ask every guest we have on. If you could sit down and have a conversation with anyone throughout the history of the world, who would it be and why?
Alexander the Great. I'm really fascinated from a historical perspective on his, he's widely regarded as one of the most fascinating military combat leaders of any time, especially at the peak of his career. He was in his mid to late 20s, and conquered most of the known world at the time. And through all of his ambition and somewhat his drive, he really was a true servant leader when it comes to leading by example, when it comes to fighting alongside his men, and actually of the lands that they conquered, showing the early stages of what we would think of as creating democratic societies of diversity and inclusion, and the allowance of local cultures and religions to continue to thrive, even though he had technically conquered those lands at such a young age. A really fascinating individual that I've studied quite a bit about. So it would be him, as young as he is.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for answering those questions and kind of just get us fired up and a little loosened up going into the conversation today. So, Brent, let's kind of back it up. Where did you grow up? What was your childhood like? And how was the journey to eventually deciding to go into the military? I know you didn't start there. You were in the boardroom first, and then eventually. Yeah. So where did it all start? How did you grow up?
It's kind of a funny story. It's it's funny how life unfolds and God works in mysterious ways. I grew up in Dallas. Went to an all-boys Catholic high school. I've got a twin brother. My parents still live in the same house we grew up in Dallas. I was there a couple of weeks ago. I got to visit them. And then I did my undergraduate education at SMU, or Southern Methodist University, and earned degrees in finance and economics. I studied a bit at Oxford University in England, and never had a lifelong vision, passion, or a desire for military service. My dad had served as a Marine reservist during Vietnam, thankfully never deployed downrange. But when I graduated and I took a job as an analyst, I actually had a really good friend of mine in college who was a year behind me, so he was now a senior at SMU. He actually was one of these young men who had a lifelong vision, dream, and passion of joining the Navy and at least attempting to be accepted into the notorious SEAL training pipeline. Now, keep in mind, this was just pre 9/11, so kind of a different vision as far as what military service and the special operations community could be. But he and I started training together. I'd been a college athlete, so for me, it was really just a way to stay fit, have an accountability partner, and simultaneously help a friend prepare for an arduous journey ahead. And so by nature, we started spending a lot of time together and having a lot of dialogue about the implications of what he was about to take on, and that piqued my interest. So I started reading books about everything from the history of the naval special warfare community, our forefathers from the underwater demolition teams in World War II, to how we essentially cut our teeth as an elite assault force in Vietnam and conflicts between then and now. And I really became fascinated by the mindset, the culture of high performance, the resilience, the mental fortitude, the adaptability, and how we build a culture of high performance, within a team setting that's designed to create desired outcomes. And that growing fascination, coupled with the somewhat extreme, boring nature of my entry-level financial analyst position, led to the culmination of a decision to leave that behind temporarily. And I joined my buddy on his journey into the Navy, and by the grace of God, made it into the training pipeline, successfully navigated that, and was assigned to SEAL Team 5. 9/11, like I said, occurred between the first 6 months of training and the follow-on of advanced training. So Afghanistan had already kicked off, and then actually my task unit, we call it a troop now, but usually that's 2 platoons worth of SEALs. We were actually the first SEALs sent into Iraq in early 2003 to begin performing what we call capture or kill missions, essentially hunting down the terrorists on the deck of cards, blacklist, other various insurgent faction leaders. So that was the beginning of the speeding freight train.
So you were kind of in a really unique position, actually going through training pre 9/11 and post 9/11. What was the culture change like during your actual training period?
It's really, really interesting question. I actually wrote a lot about that in my first book, and not just in the training, but just in the military and predominantly in the world of special operations. Because being at the tip of the spear, and as you guys know, probably we had boots on the ground within, I think, 36 hours after the second tower fell of Tier 1 Special Operations Unit and cross-functional teams in the world of special operations already over there. And so it really was a major mindset shift in the seriousness of the job, of the trade, of the craft, and how obviously our culture, both in training and when we're in the teams, is designed to be in a constant state of improvement. You take everything extremely serious. You're all in. And then, of course, in wartime, you saw that level of seriousness and focus go 10 times what it already was. And interestingly, here's an interesting story about the mindset around that and why our program is designed to select the people that it is. There was one guy in the class ahead of us. We run 6 classes a year, so every couple months. He had, rumor has it, the legend has it, that he had tried, I think, twice during Hell Week to quit. And I guess he was well liked by the instructors, or had some mutual friends in the instructor staff, and they kind of encouraged him to come on, stay the course, you got this. Well, shortly after 9/11 occurred, he turned in his trident, and either turned in his trident or quit during advanced training, and was like, "Wow, this is serious. I'm not in." So it's an interesting story to show why our program is designed the way it is and how serious what our job is, but also the mindset required to understand that our job is one of war, to be warriors and to take the fight to the enemy and to defend the nation. And so it was a huge culture shift, and quite a challenging one as far as organizational transformation goes. And going into these conflicts, we kind of entered them as a large, slow-moving 20th century organization, assuming we're fighting the same type of enemy, which we're not. We're fighting a very networked, ecosystem, dynamic, and agile enemy, where we had to change our structure, change the way we train, the way we bring lessons learned back from the battlefield, change our operating models, so that we could sustain the fight against a very dangerous and decentralized enemy. So we had to learn how to become even more agile and decentralized than we had previously been as an organization.
Yes, and kind of talking about that, the mindset in general, and you talked about that case of the SEAL turning his trident in, and SEAL team, or SEAL training being so difficult and weeding out the people that, they're not going to make it once they get into the field. And they're not going to be able to, have the backs of their team. Yeah. What was that? There's always that question. What was the most difficult part of the actual buds for you? Talking about the physicality and the mindset of it.
Yeah, and I always get that question because I mentor, young guys through the program. Now, actually, just another guy just reached out to me. I'm talking to him this afternoon. Who, ironically, exact same path as mine. He's a senior at Southern Methodist University. He's a finance major, and now he's like, "Well, maybe I want to be a SEAL." So I was like, "Well, let's slow down, man. Let's talk first and see, see how serious you really are." So you always get like, well, what's the hardest part of buds? What's the hardest part of the training? Is it more physical? Is it more mental? And the Naval Special Warfare community has actually invested millions of dollars and years of research and data collection and feedback, trying to identify sort of the mental, physical, emotional, and cognitive attributes of students more likely to successfully navigate our training pipeline. Because in a perfect world, we would like to graduate larger classes so we can have more team guys, so we can grow our community. But because it's arguably one of the hardest, if not the hardest, special operations training selection pipeline known to man, we still graduate small percentages of each class. So we're trying to fill the top of the funnel with better candidates so that we can hopefully graduate more students. And what we've identified really is, the narrative the data shows is not what you would imagine as far as like star athletes in college and academic excellence. And while, intellect and fitness are critical just to be accepted into the program, it comes down to kind of those more elusive, less measurable attributes around grit, resilience, mental fortitude, the ability to maintain an appropriate degree of positivity in the face of adversity, but most importantly, a deep emotional connection to the concept of serving, not just in the military, but as a SEAL. Just like if you think about any goal either of you have ever, or any of us have ever tried to pursue personally and professionally, in sports and academics, in your career, it's that passion that drives you through the hardest times. Because any goal you ever pursue is going to be riddled with some adversity, pain, suffering, that type of thing. If it doesn't, then it's probably not that great of a goal. Just saying. And so for me, it was not necessarily one specific evolution. I had trained a lot in distance running. I'd been a competitive swimmer, growing up. So, and then I trained for about a year and a half, both in Dallas and then at high altitude in Colorado for 6 months before joining the Navy. For me, it was more of the cumulative effect of not just, the physical abuse, but the anxiety, the fear of failure. You're getting beat down all day long. You still have to go home and do homework and study for the test. So there's an academic requirement as well, and the standards also are high, not just in the physical elements, but you got to make the grade on the tests. And if you don't, you're out. So you also have a series of pass-fail evolutions where you get one or two chances or you're out. So it's that constant grind and the anxiety of, am I going to make it? How to stay focused, how to stay emotionally connected to the long-term vision of what you're trying to accomplish. For me, it was more of that cumulative stress that was the hardest part, especially in those early few months where there's a lot of uncertainty as to, are you going to successfully navigate those pass-fail evolutions? And of course, Hell Week, which is the brutal crucible that all SEALs share that very few students successfully navigate. Hell Week's typically the 5th week, give or take. You'll lose half your class leading up to Hell Week, and then in Hell Week, you'll lose pretty much everybody else that you will typically within a class. Obviously, you'll have some guys dropped later on for performance or not passing some of those evolutions, but those first couple months are really tough on you mentally because of, like I said, that cumulative effect of the anxiety that plagues you every day.
Those that are listening maybe don't know exactly what like Hell Week or Buds is. What's a typical day during Hell Week? Walk us through a typical day.
So Hell Week starts on a Sunday evening and ends on a Friday afternoon. The beauty of that Sunday is the class reports to the classroom early in the morning with just a couple of required items in their possession. And the beauty of that day is that the class doesn't know exactly when Hell Week will start, and that's by design, so that the anxiety is building and eating away at the core of your soul. And within Hell Week, you don't sleep pretty much the entire week. You run the equivalent of multiple marathons while wet and sandy. You swim dozens of miles in the open frigid ocean. You run with heavy logs, boats, backpacks. You run the obstacle course multiple times a day. There's just endless calisthenics, endless motion, constant beatings, and doing all this while suffering from illness, severe chafing, covered in scabs, stress fractures, sometimes broken bones, and almost constant second stage hypothermia. One of their goals is to keep you freezing cold, wet and miserable, day and night, 24 hours a day until Friday. And in all seriousness, that's one of the biggest things that weeds people out is they just mentally, they can't wrap their head around the fact that they're going to be feeling that way for that long, every minute of every day until Friday. It's you almost can't think about it that way. So you have to kind of not just accept it, but lean into it and literally pray for more so that your expectations aren't met. So you're doing it. It's constant motion and you're doing everything in large part. You're in boat crews, so 7-person teams. So a lot of what you're doing is in competition with the other boat crews as well. So everything is a put out evolution. There's nothing where you're able to lag back. And if you do, you're beaten even more mercilessly. It's a good time. You should try it.
Sounds like
Am I selling this well? I usually think of myself as a pretty good salesperson, but
I'm on my way right now to the recruiting office.
Okay. We'll talk afterwards.
So I kind of want to talk about the camaraderie part of Navy SEAL training. So basically, no one knows that you can't do something like that on your own. So how do you feel like after it was all said and done with your brothers, your family, your brothers and sisters?
Yeah.
Do you feel like a sense of like a deeper connection to them than anyone else?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's a great question because it's a fascinating evolution because when you show up to Buds, for example, you're kind of in it for number one because there's pass fail evolutions and you took a huge risk just to get there. 85-90% attrition rate. So there's a large chance that you're mathematically speaking, if nothing else, that you're going to fail and you're going to end up in some other job or career in the Navy that you didn't want to do. And so there's a huge element of looking out for yourself when you initially get there. But to your point, exactly, you realize very quickly you can't do it on your own, and you'll go much further faster with the person to your left and right. And even more so, taking it a step further, once you quickly learn how to look out more so for the person to your left and right and make it less about yourself, not only do you create an overlapping web of performance within your team or your boat crew, but you're not worrying so much about the stress. You're not worrying so much about how bad you feel or how cold you are, how miserable you are. I'm here to support you. I'm here to support you. And that kind of it really alleviates, honestly, some of that misery because you're focusing on someone else and not making it about yourself. So you quickly go from this individual mindset rapidly into a team mindset. And if you don't, you typically don't make it that far. And you realize that, and the bond you create within a class is you cannot replicate that anywhere else in the civilian world. Of course, you'd have to go through something very similar in order to do so. And then of course you serve with many of those guys get dispersed to different teams, East Coast, West Coast, Hawaii, what have you, and then you're on different deployment cycles. So oftentimes it's difficult to keep up. But I had two of the guys from my Buds class in my first platoon, and so you carry that bond with you, and then that bond is very similar, obviously, if not identical, to when you're actually working, in platoon, in a troop, in a task unit within the SEAL teams, and then you're applying those skills now. So of course, in a combat scenario, it's a fascinating culture that even my company is designed to try and replicate some of that, within high performing teams in the business world. But it's very difficult to replicate because people don't go through that type of training together.
Brent, you played, so you're an athlete at SMU. You played rugby or lacrosse?
Rugby.
Rugby, okay. And
Yeah.
kind of, I feel like you do see a lot of SEALs that were, played lacrosse, rugby, or they were a part of some type of team. So as you kind of played sports throughout your, probably high school and then in college, did that help going into not just business, but then eventually SEAL training and then the teams? Did you already have that mindset
Yeah.
of being
Yeah,
a teammate?
definitely. I think so. I mean, I grew up as a competitive swimmer. So swimming obviously is an interesting combination of both individual effort and team effort because you are on a team, the swim team. But it's very much an individual sport in large part. And then segueing into rugby in college, there's definitely a easy correlation between sports and military, especially in the world of special operations when it comes to team cohesion and working cross-functionally and developing leaders at every level within the organization or within the team so that, it's not just about one person making decisions. You can decentralize, authority to, in a perfect world, everybody in the team. Like in the SEAL teams, we're a very flat organization. We're designed culturally to be in a position where every single person, in a platoon, in a troop, is a leader in some capacity, leading in their job function, leading on the battlefield, leading by example, and just helping lead and represent, our values and our culture as an organization. Very similar when you think of what the attributes of high performing teams are when it comes to a winning sports team, a tier one special operations unit, or a high performing business organization. Some very similar attributes when it comes to the level of engagement, participation, and passion that people have.
So do you think, like from a leadership perspective, so going into your Navy SEAL world, everyone's at the same intensity level as you, and then you go into the business world, and not everyone's kind of carrying the same intensity level you are. Can it be frustrating as a leader and as one of the main guys that you are?
Absolutely, it's a question that I get a lot, and it was a early stage challenge for me as an entrepreneur. I mean, you go from a guy or a small team with a great business plan, then you realize, oh shit, now I'm a I'm a leader. I'm a manager. I'm meant to inspire people. I'm meant to emotionally connect people to the vision of what we're trying to do. I have, engagement strategies that need to be rolled out so that we get the most out of every single person on the team, which is really very challenging, especially as a leader. Typically, leaders are already more passionate about what they're trying to accomplish because of the position that they're in, or because they're the ones who maybe they designed the team or the organization, or ultimately defined the original mission, vision, and the values of what the organization is meant to stand for. And then one of the many burdens of command as a leader is to connect people to that on an ongoing basis, not just once, but literally almost every single day, reminding people of what we collectively are trying to accomplish. What is our shared sense of purpose? What values do we hold? And supporting behaviors and accountability mechanisms are important for all of us to authentically embody so we can achieve those common goals. So it was a big sort of leadership challenge for me early on, and also just adopting new management styles as well. There's obviously a lot of core principles you can bring from the world of special operations into the world of business, but a lot of styles that don't mesh well with a multi-generational workforce, or younger people that are inspired by different things. So I've quickly learned that I need to become not just a teacher of leadership, but more so a student of leadership. The best leaders out there that I can think of are lifelong learners. They're constantly craving not just new information and better ways to lead, but also they crave transparent feedback from those that they lead. They want people to tell them how can be better. So it's a little uncomfortable at first, but once you kind of adopt that mindset as a leader, that you cannot effectively lead a team unless you are very transparent with them, and you create a culture of transparency and upward feedback so that you can be in a position to be in a constant state of improvement.
So as you transitioned, how was that process of going from the military, getting out of the military and then starting a couple different companies, and then eventually, you have taking point leadership company. So how was that transition in starting
Yeah.
that process?
The transition can be obviously a challenge. It's something that's talked about a lot, especially now,
Right.
20 years at war, and we have droves of veterans, combat veterans and other types of veterans from different branches of the military entering the workforce every single day. And how do we create opportunities for them? How do we help them more successfully transition? There's a lot of nonprofits now that literally are designed to help professionals in the military transition to become professionals in the business world. A lot of large business organizations out there now have whole business units and divisions designed to hire, train, and recruit military veterans as well. So it's really been great to see that progression. For me, it was all about having a plan. One thing I'd seen when people start to transition out, if they don't have a very specific, actionable plan, then they kind of sort of get lost in some of the complexity of what that transition is. They don't not sure what career path they want to take, or do they want to go back to school, and they end up oftentimes doing not much of anything, or
Yeah.
they end up back in the military 6 months later because they throw their hands up and be like, well, that's all I know, so I'm just going to go back to what I know, what I'm comfortable with. So my plan was very specific. I figured after doing a lot of research and just talking to different people and mentors at graduate school, for me would be a good transitional period to sort of retrain my brain, learn new things, network with other professionals, and young aspiring business people or entrepreneurs or people who've been in the business world for a long time. You get a lot of that kind of mix within grad school classes for like an MBA, for example. And so I took the GMAT before my last combat deployment. I was accepted into the program I wanted to before that deployment. So I got out, after my last deployment, had a relatively short period before I transitioned, and I started that program 1 week after I got out of the Navy.
Oh,
So
wow.
literally no downtime
Oh,
whatsoever.
you weren't playing around.
No, I had to move into a new condo that I bought that I couldn't afford, and started grad school with student loans, and then started my first company during and towards the end of that grad school program. So
Awesome. And so kind of talk about that program, taking point leadership. What do you guys do, and how does that kind of process work?
well, it's been an evolution because my first company was actually a home finding search engine. So this was still right at the cusp of before the housing market imploded. So terrible timing from an entrepreneurial standpoint looking back. So that was my first major pivot on the battlefield of business. We'd raised about $1.5 million, started basically like an early version of, Trulia, Zillow, those types of home finding search engine sites. And it wasn't necessarily due to our entrepreneurial wisdom, but more so that we were capitalizing on a white space that in a booming marketplace that we didn't know was going to implode
Yeah.
shortly thereafter. So we were just kind of rode that wave to the top, and we're like, we're awesome, we're the smartest entrepreneurs in the world because we're kicking ass, and didn't realize it wasn't really because of us. It was just because of the tidal wave of the housing market at the time. And so we learned so much about digital media, analytics, lead generation, that type of thing, just by running that business that when 2008 happened and the housing market did implode, and the economy, not just here but also somewhat globally, started to take a major hit, and we started moving quickly into that recession. We pivoted quickly into digital media, so we went out and raised more money and started a digital marketing agency with the knowledge we learned from running the first business, and a business that was not necessarily tied to any one specific industry, so that we could kind of avoid some of the cyclical nature of what was happening in the economy. And that business took off. It doubled in size, both in headcount and revenue, with healthy profitability every single year. Sold that business in 2016. What I found was not necessarily a passion for those specific industries, but a passion for growing great organizations and building and managing a culture that's designed to achieve a desired outcome, and people practices and developing leaders. And that's where really the foundation and inspiration for Taking Point Leadership came from. We're an organizational development consulting firm. I don't like the term consultant. We're really more of a strategic partner with the clients we work with. But the first step in that journey was to write Taking Point, my first book, which was designed to become, the foundational element of our curriculum with a lot of what we do when it comes to organizational change and leadership and culture transformation, and built a deeper level curriculum and a team around that, and that's led to where we are now.
Awesome. Yeah. And kind of, talking about, the business side of it, because you do see a lot of those SEALs and stuff transition, like you had talked about, and you've kind of just, you took it and ran with it, and, kind of embracing the process of the entire, organization. And then now mentoring and speaking. I know you kind of talked about it on a couple different podcasts, on a Google Talk, in your book, that fear of speaking, public speaking, and getting in front of, big audiences. I think it is like the biggest fear,
Yeah, yeah.
of humans, right?
It's like the
So
number one fear, like
yeah,
combat aside.
yeah, that's probably my biggest fear. That's probably what I would say.
Yeah.
So how do you overcome that? You talk to organizations like Google and some of the biggest organizations in the world. So how do you kind of overcome that, plan and prepare for that?
That actually was kind of another pivotal moment in my career where I was running both those early stage companies, spending 90% of my time on the digital media and analytics company. And I'd spoken at, a couple trade shows and conferences here and there, and boring topics around digital analytics, or I was sit on a panel and talk in front of people, but not like, keynote speaking at large events or to
Right.
large corporations, nothing like that. And I had started my Forbes leadership column. So I have a Forbes column that I write on, well, as much as I can. But and the title of the column is From the Battlefield to the Boardroom. So similar to what my company does, is taking many of the leadership and culture principles of the world of special operations into building higher performing teams that generate better business outcomes. And I got an email one day from the president of Bank of America Merrill Lynch Asia Pacific, one of the top, at the time he was one of the top 5 executives in the whole global organization, and really awesome, high energy Australian guy that just rose through the ranks from Goldman Sachs to UBS, and then became one of the most prominent leaders in the organization at a very young age. I mean, he's only a few years older than me, and he's now number 3 in
Wow.
Bank of America, reporting directly to the CEO, and in his late 40s.
That's
pretty
impressive.
pretty sharp guy,
Yeah, that's
very
awesome.
driven. And he sent me this email, and I had to look. I was like, how did this guy even get my email? And through your author page, you can opt to provide your contact information. So he found it that way. He read my very first article in that Forbes column, and he loved it. He's a guy who, like many of us out there, kind of fascinated with the world of special operations and the mindset, and he's very, very into wellness and athletics, and he's just a very driven person, fascinated by that type of behavior and mindset. And he's like, short email. She's like, I love this article. I really believe in these philosophies and how we can bring them into the world of business. And, we've been struggling a lot with our, post merger, culture assimilation issues. And Bank of America came together with Merrill Lynch. She's like, I'd love for you to come out and do a series of keynote presentations and workshops at our Global Leadership Summit in Hong Kong next month. Didn't ask if I was a speaker, didn't ask if I was a consultant, didn't ask if I had a website, videos, testimonials, or any experience whatsoever, which I didn't. He was like, he just because I had been a SEAL, he was like, that's good enough. I'm sure you're awesome. And so, as the young entrepreneurs that we all are, you know the deal of, what did I say? I was like, absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely.
Hell
So I
yeah.
sent the email, I was like, all right, what's the next step? And I remember I sent it, I looked at my wife, I was like, oh shit. Like, what did I just commit myself to? But again, I realized that it could be a great business opportunity for my current organization or other type or learning new skills such as speaking. So I went all in, worked with them to develop the content. I rehearsed like a crazy person leading up to it, and my wife came with me. This was before we had 4 kids, and I went out there, and we did it, and it was absolutely terrifying. My wife, like, I didn't sleep the night before. My wife was like, I do not like you before you speak. I like you much better after you speak, because you're just in your head and
Yeah.
you're just rehearsing and rehearsing, because you know the only outcome it had to go extremely well. Not perfect, because there's no such thing, but that was, in my mind, that was the only desirable outcome, was it had to be absolutely as close to perfect as possible. So therefore, preparation is the only thing that's in your control, right?
Right.
And it did go well, at least well enough. I look back and God, that was terrible. But they loved it, so that was the only important thing. So they had me back to do this Asia Pacific tour from Hong Kong, Sydney, and Singapore for the following 4 years, where we did that. Of course, I built sort of a brand around that as a global speaker, and having experience with large global brands, only being one, obviously, but and that just kind of organically morphed into other speaking opportunities. At the time, I used those to leverage new business opportunities for the current company, but then also found a passion for talking about leadership and talking about culture and high performance and what we can learn from that here in the business world. And that really was the ultimate foundation of what now our company, Taking Point Leadership, is. That's where it all started.
Yeah.
One Forbes article.
Yeah, and then now it's morphed into 2 books, and then Embrace the Suck, which we have here. So as we kind of start wrapping this up, talk about your new book, Embrace the Suck. I want you to go ahead, and some of the things we talked about in this conversation
Sure.
are in the book. The Audible is great. The book's great. Kind of talk about that briefly for our listeners.
Yeah, the inspiration around this really stems from a lot of the leadership development programs that we incorporate with our client partners, because you can't enhance the performance and results of a team unless you enhance the performance, mindset, rituals, and behaviors of the people on the team. So I was like, well, maybe there's a self-help project here. I figured I had another book in me, so I thought, well, maybe I'll go ahead and start delving into the world of self-help. You guys still there?
Yeah.
Yep, we're here.
We're here.
Okay. And so I started doing some research, and what I found out there, I never read a self-help book before, was, obviously it's one of the most popular genres when it comes to books and podcasts.
Right.
It's a multi-billion-dollar organization, or excuse me, industry. But I found a lot of fluff, a lot of happy talk, a lot of just nonsensical stuff that's not actionable, that I don't connect with. I'm sure a lot of people do. They must. But I said, well, maybe there's an opportunity to take also, again, a little bit more hard edge, gritty, tough love in your face approach to personal transformation. Going into the project, didn't know 2020 was going to suck so bad. So selfishly, the timing of the book was somewhat perfect, coming out just a few months ago, after most of us had been, obviously all of us had been impacted by COVID and civil, social, and political unrest here in the United States, and financial and economic uncertainty. And it really has, in all seriousness, proven to be a powerful tool of inspiration and action for many people. So we've gotten really great feedback. So I'm very pleased and humbled by that. But essentially, the book is about resilience. It's about mental fortitude and being more intentional in the fine art of comfort zone expansion, and using pain, anxiety, and suffering as a pathway towards enlightenment and wisdom, and applying lessons learned so that we don't make the same mistakes and we bounce back from adverse situations and obstacles faster, and putting better constraints on our lives so we can avoid temptation and stay focused on the goals we're trying to accomplish, plan better, execute better, debrief with ourselves better, so that we're in a constant state of improvement and can kind of bring all those things together to essentially live a happier, more purpose-driven, meaningful life, a life of also giving to causes greater than yourself, and really meet or exceed more of the goals we set.
Awesome. And I will put the link for the book in the podcast. Where else can our listeners, where can they reach you at? Where can they find your content, your book, and your
Sure.
leadership?
The book, and I will say for those, I'm sure all of your listeners and viewers know who David Goggins is.
Yep.
If not most of them, retired SEAL, world-renowned ultra athlete, wrote the foreword. Nice gut punch to kick off the book. And it's available on all online retailers, the Amazons of the world. It's in all brick and mortar bookstores like Barnes and Noble and Amazon as well. My company website's takingpointleadership.com. I am on social media wise, I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram as well, Brent_Gleeson.
Were you in the same? So you and Goggins, you guys went to SEAL training together? Did you guys graduate in the same
well,
team?
He had been spending 10 months at the spa that is known as Buds already, having been injured a couple times during Hell Week. So we were his third Hell Week. Can't imagine doing that 3 times. 1 time was enough for me, so I decided to keep
only
moving
Goggins.
forward. Yeah, I was like joking about it in the book. I was like, you're like the only person who probably really just loves it here.
Yeah,
and you like the abuse so much that you just want to stay. And so we graduated together. We actually went to the same team together as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And from the SEAL teams to the boardroom, what is your, I guess, most proud moment? Whether that's in the on the battlefield or in the boardroom. What is your most proud moment in your career? What are you most proud of?
I think one of my most proud moments was also one of my most humbling moments, actually. If you want to get deep for 1 second, I'll spare the details, but during the building of the first company and then simultaneously building a second organization, raising more money, essentially running 2 companies at the same time. Obviously, not doing this by myself, but
right.
a lot going on. I had, I was married. I had a young child, and I was essentially, again, sparing the details, transformed into a full-time single parent, not a part-time single parent, full-time single parent to a toddler, literally overnight. And
Wow.
so I remember thinking, falling quickly back onto, SEAL mindset, mental fortitude, grit, persevere, drive forward, and I knew I wanted to get ahead of the rumor mill in the company, because you know how those things spread real quick. Oh, did you hear about what happened to Brent? Oh my gosh, this is terrible. What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to the company? And I called this meeting and I said, guys, here's what happened. I want to get ahead of this. I want you guys to know the truth, so you don't come to your own conclusions. This will not impact my ability to lead this organization. It won't impact you guys. It won't impact the company's, positive trajectory. Keep moving forward. Stay the course. Blah, 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 blah. And I didn't realize at the time, but I was totally full of shit because I didn't realize how stressful that was going to be, and how much I really had to shift my focus to, single parenting and raising a child. Ultimately realized that I was at that moment incapable of being the CEO of my own company. So looking back, I only say it's a proud moment in a very humbling way, because I made a very tough decision to remove myself against all the advice I got from mentors and coaches. Don't do that. You'll never be CEO of that company again if you do so. But I stepped down as CEO so that I could put a leader in place that could have the focus and the ability to help the organization navigate the rapid growth that we had. And it was very difficult and humbling and kind of embarrassing in a weird way, but it was the right move for the organization. And excuse me, looking back, you realize in your professional career, whether it's in SEAL teams or in business or in entrepreneurship, sometimes, actually always, the most important decisions are the hardest decisions that you have to make. And as leaders, that's the term burden of command, and it wasn't just made up out of nowhere. It is a burden, and leadership is tough. And making those decisions is very difficult. But when you put the needs of the team or the organization before yourself, ultimately you're doing the right thing, and ultimately you're going to learn more from it. It's going to build trust within the organization, and and it's going to be the best for everybody involved.
Awesome. You want to go ahead and wrap
it
it up?
Yeah. So Brent, it's been awesome talking to you. I definitely learned a lot from you. I could probably sit here and pick your brain for hours and hours. But
You must start charging us.
Yeah,
by that
I know
point.
exactly. Yeah,
My billable hours, gentlemen, is pretty high.
yeah. So on the Freedom First podcast, our final segment is going to be the Freedom Fighter of the Week. I'm sure you've heard of it. Basically, it's going to be the most influential person to you. We kind of want to shout them out, and so let us know who your Freedom Fighter of the Week is.
I'm asked frequently who inspires me the most, and my answer is always every single one of my teammates that didn't come home. That obviously still lives on in eternity in Valhalla, but my inspiration is always those that gave more, that made the ultimate sacrifice. It's something going back, like we talked about earlier, around our culture, and you see this often, in the world of special operations, where, and this isn't to sound macho by any means, but warriors want to die either a warrior's death, or they want to live till they're 105 and they see their great grandchildren grow. And having known so many of those brave warriors, having been to so many funerals and lost so many friends, I always find great solace and inspiration and perspective in those individuals to really understand what true sacrifice is when it becomes, when your life becomes nothing about yourself and it's all about everyone else.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brent. We appreciate you. Your service in the uniform and out of the uniform, and helping lead the next generation of warriors as well, and protecting us at home. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. We appreciate it. We wish you and your family so much health and success. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Brent.
God bless, guys. Thanks so much for having me on the show. It was fun. Hopefully we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah,
sir.
would
Thank
love
you.
to. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for listening to this episode. We appreciate you and your support of the show. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave feedback on Apple Podcasts.